please join me in welcoming BoydPatterson.
Thanks, Gina. It's good to be here. Thank you. Start with a physics lesson. Okay? If I look at their hand for a second, just put it right in front of you. Look at the palm. Now close it. Where does the fist get its power? Bringing these fingers together. Talking in terms of physics, why is this formation of a hand stronger than this? Anybody?
Mass.
What's that? Mass? Yes. The mass, it's brought together, that's for sure. Any other comments?
Strength in numbers.
Yes. Bring it all together. That's pretty much it. When you bring things together, that's where the power truly exists. And that's exactly what needs to happen in Chattanooga when we talk about gang violence and youth violence. History lesson. That's a logo of something very close and personal to Chattanooga that dealt with an issue we were having a long time ago, where different people came together, different groups came together, and we were able to solve this problem. Does anyone recognize that logo? I want to take a guess at it. Power board. Has to do with power, yes. There's the problem. Erosion. Back in the Great Depression era. Any other guesses now? That was the logo for TVA, bringing electricity for all. And it was a great partnership of private partnership, public partnership, volunteers, people that cared about this problem. And by coming together, we were able to create something that was very pretty, very beautiful. It went beyond supplying power, and it was one of the first big steps to getting things to where we have them now. We've got a beautiful riverfront now. A lot of the economic development has used the river and the local resources as a huge asset, and it's great. I'm here to tell you today about another issue that's facing us. In this time period, the same type of collaboration and coming together is going to be required for us to get over this as well, which is good because that is our history. And that is a street gang issue, something I've learned a lot about. I've practiced in the court system for a long time, and I've seen it progress over the years to where we have it now. The comprehensive gang assessment that we did with the Gang Task Force, one of the most comprehensive in the nation, according to the National Gang Center. It let us know we have gang activity in all 21 zip codes that were assessed, and it's both emerging and entrenched. When you hear entrenched, think Atlanta, think Memphis, think Los Angeles. We have that stage 4 cancer here in Chattanooga. It's typically in East Chattanooga, particularly Avondale, the West Side, and Alton Park. But primarily it's emerging, which means those clear hierarchical structures haven't formed yet. We still have different gang members from different gangs doing dope deals together, so it's not completely crystallized. We know where it's happening. While it's in all 21 zip codes, you can kind of see that spine of gang activity, starting in East Chattanooga, going through Glenwood, Highland Park, East Lake, and down to the south side. That's where it's happening. The police have done a phenomenal job in getting out in front of this early in terms of intel. They're starting to keep up, and they've been keeping up with who the gang members are. What clique are they associated with? What types of crimes are they committing? What are their tattoos? What does that story tell us? Where's the graffiti? So that's really good about our particular situation. This is Chief Bobby Dodd talking in 2012 about the rise in gang activity and how young they're getting and how much more ruthless their crimes are, where they just don't seem to care as much about what happens to other people. He's talking about how it's going the wrong direction. The 22% increase in aggravated assaults from 2011 to 2012, he attributes directly to the gang-related murders, violent crimes and aggravated assaults. So, where are we in the news? This is why gang activity is every business person's problem too. You may not live in any of these particular areas, but if you like to go downtown, you like to bring your kids to the aquarium like I do, let them go to see the CDM, walk across the bridge. You like hearing stories about people coming to Chattanooga because it's such an incredible place to start a business. Those are the headlines that we've been having. The worst crimes possible. That's the rapes, the big-time dope dealing, the targeted violence, the random violence. And whether it's gang violence like gang on gang or just gang members out there committing crimes, that's what we're seeing. That's what other folks are seeing and making their decisions upon when deciding whether or not to come to Chattanooga. We have a lot of that. Our gang activity has made national news. When 9 people got shot on Christmas Eve in 2011, that went way beyond Chattanooga. CNN, Fox, USA Today. So no one here in this city can say, I didn't know we had a gang problem. Here's something not a lot of people know. It's really significant for the future. Everyone pretty much knows about the Mexican drug cartels, how they're some of the most violent people on the planet. They're actually committing ruthless acts simply to show how bad their cartel is and how they should control everything. A lot of people don't know is the efforts they're expending in trying to build contacts with U.S. street gangs right now. They're recruiting them for assassins. And particularly, they're recruiting them, building alliances with them to control the street drug trade. So they've got a conduit from manufacturer all the way to the end user. This is an article about one they broke up just 2 months ago in Los Angeles between a Mexican cartel, prison gang, and a street gang for that reason, so they can have direct access to the street drug trade. Not a lot of people know that every single one of those cartels are in Atlanta, Georgia. The Gulf Cartel, the Sinaloas, the Zetas, the Tijuana Cartel, they're all there. That's testimony from a 2-kilo case that I tried back in 2010. That's from the DEA agent educating the jury about why Atlanta is the hub on the East Coast for drug trafficking. It has to do with the highway system. Comes up through Mexico, takes I-20 east. From there, it goes all up the East Coast. Atlanta today is what Miami was in the 80s when it comes to dope dealing. So we got Atlanta there, and right up that drug corridor is Dalton, Georgia. A lot of people know has a large Hispanic contingent there. Largely hardworking, great folks, as far as symbolizing the ideals of what America is, was, and should be. That community exemplifies it. However, when it comes to cartels, that's the typical marginalization. The typical marginalization, the Hispanic culture allows gang activity to flourish because they're less integrated. That's $2 million in cartel money. It's caught going back to Mexico in Whitfield County, which, as you know, borders Hamilton County. Belong to a cartel with ties to Dalton, Georgia. And from Dalton, we're right up the street. Those are pictures of the Hispanic gang graffiti in Chattanooga right now. Again, it's really nascent. It's not as bad as the other types of gangs we do have here. But I'm telling you, we have all the ingredients for a major gang problem right now. We're not Atlanta yet. We're not Memphis yet. We're not Houston or North Miami Beach. But the next 8 years are going to be key in determining where Chattanooga goes on this particular crossroads. Are we going to come together? Are we going to all recognize that? Well, this is what I'm suggesting. You may have heard in the news that Bill Cox has decided not to run for district attorney. He's stepping down. I've been encouraged to run for that position. I have not decided to do so. However, if I did, this is what I would do, and I want to share it with you. It has everything to do with everybody coming together to address this right now. There are 5 components of it. Let's start with T. First, you target the organization. One of the negative things about going after gangs, I'm speaking as a prosecutor here, is you wait till they commit crimes. Well, they commit crimes 2, 3, 4 at a time. It's a drive-by, aggravated robbery, aggravated assault. Well, in a gang that's dozens deep, if not a couple of hundred, that really doesn't do much to staunch the growth. One of the things that, with the task force, I was able to do was I was in a position to give feedback on what type of laws we needed in Tennessee. We had a RICO statute already. We had a gang statute already. I was able to write a law that integrated the two. You may have heard about it, the RICO statute that Governor Haslam signed into law last year. It allows us to go after criminal gangs as an organization, where you don't wait until they're committing these crimes 2 or 3 or 4 at a time. These are examples from the best practices of state-level RICO prosecution from the state of Florida. As you can see, they're not going after them 2 or 3 or 4 at a time. They're doing it 10 at a time, 14 at a time, and it's proactive. That's what we can do to target the organizations here. And again, the police know who the bad guys are, so it's not that big of a stretch to start doing these things. Another way to target the organization, there are civil laws that allow us to create gang-free zones. It's under the nuisance statute, just like when a bar runs down a neighborhood or some type of business that's unsavory runs down the quality of life. It's called a nuisance. In Tennessee, gangs are per se considered nuisances, which means that, and this is from California, which of course, again, best practices pioneered out of a place whose gang problem is a lot worse than ours. You tell the gangs that they cannot associate within this gang-free zone. Well, it's just a violation of a civil order, no real jail time. But what these gang-free zones allow the police to do is when they see gang members hanging out in these areas, they're allowed to pat them down and arrest them on that civil violation. Whatever guns or dope they have on them suddenly turns it into a criminal case. And practically what happens, according to the folks in California I've spoke to about this, gang members just leave. They get out of the neighborhood. They're not hanging out in the corners anymore. They're not hanging out on the steps intimidating residents. They're gone. So just one more way you can target the entire organization using the laws we have now. Nashville actually filed the first one in the state against a Kurdish gang. It became final earlier this year. Memphis filed their nuisance statute about 2 weeks ago. So again, these are best practices from other places that we can implement here in Chattanooga as well. And we know where the gangs are committing their crimes. Second thing, technology. I was part of the team that brought new technology to the courtroom. I have an app on the App Store, which is an incredibly creative experience. It really opened my eyes to how technology can be used. 2013. This is 5000angels.com, which is a website designed for the Children's Advocacy Center that allows citizens to give messages of hope to these victims of child abuse and their families, because typically they have to be held confidential. Check out, if you don't remember anything else from today, check out 5000angels.com. This is something where, again, from developing an app, it really opened my eyes to what we can do with technology in the gang fight as well. On the left, you see what's called CGIS. It's where the court database is maintained. It's where all the court cases are, where all the defendants are. I went to Mayor Coppinger and asked him if he could build a program that would allow the court database to interface with the gang intel. And by his leadership, we got it done. And so right now, we have a gang docket. We were catching the gang members when they were coming through on the aggravated assaults and the drive-bys. Now we've got them on the DUIs, the domestic assaults, the simple possessions, things that are slipping through the cracks on. And that's just a really easy way where if you want to hammer the gangs from top to bottom, this is one example of how we can use technology to do that. There's something called link analysis. It's used by the FBI against Al-Qaeda. It's used by the TBI against these sex trafficking rings you may have heard about. And basically the way it works is you dump all the data from all the reports and all the agencies on a particular issue or crime. And you start seeing where those links emerge. What houses keep popping up. What vehicles keep popping up. What street names keep popping up. That's what it looks like. And it allows you to see, by the use of technology, these organizations. IBM builds new technologies for free if they can figure out a way to monetize it later. Last year, was able to get, after a number of phone conferences through their teams, an IBM team flew in to Chattanooga, met with me, RICO prosecutors from Florida, and Bill Cox. Started building one of these, started exploring this. It all got put on hold when the task force got scrapped. But I'm telling you, that's all stuff that's in the box right now that can be picked back up again. Again, use of technology to take things to the next level against the gangs. Tough trials. People outside the legal profession may not get this as much as lawyers do. Picture those X's there as all the gang members in Chattanooga. The police are going to arrest some of them. Some are always going to get away, but we're going to arrest some of them. Of those cases, as lawyers know, you don't determine the facts that you're brought. Some of those cases are great. Some of those cases, the defendants confessed. The witnesses aren't intimidated. It's on video, something like that. The overwhelming majority of those cases are difficult. They're challenging. The witnesses are intimidated. Once they find out it's a gang case, they don't show up for court. The victim a lot of times is another gang member or a dope dealer, not real sympathetic. And then, of course, there's some cases that do need to get dismissed. They just, the police, it's just not there to get it up to probable cause. It gets dismissed on a suppression hearing. That's part of the game. I understand that. There's a tendency for folks who don't like to lose to not stray into that realm of tough cases. Well, one of the things that has to happen when you're fighting gang cases is that you have to be willing to stray into that realm, especially when it comes to gang leaders and repeat violent offenders. You have to be willing to take it on the chin every now and then. If the judge can get it and the jury can get it, and you put together the best case possible and the jury lets them go, well, that's no different than you letting them go, except for every now and then you're going to win some of those. If you only win half of those that you ordinarily would not take, those are people that are in jail that ordinarily would be back on the streets. And that's how you can take things to the next level using tough trials. That's something I've always taught. That slide you saw was used in a statewide conference about 2 years ago. I've written about it in the national magazines, Prosecutor. The book that I've written about 404B evidence deals with getting this particular type of evidence of prior crimes before the same jury. It's where a jury hears about dope dealing on a particular case, but also hears about the defendant's prior dope dealing convictions or gang affiliation. You don't need these tools in confession cases. You need them in tough trials. Teamwork. Who here has heard of the gang task force before? All right. That's what the gang task force was about. What I've talked about so far is suppression. That is something the district attorney's office has to do. You have to have a tough, collaborative effort against gangs. But for a region to seriously deal with the gang issue that's emerging, you have to have the support and partnerships with churches, mentoring agencies, job training agencies for both young kids and returning felons, social services. All of those things have to be part of it. Family training. Have to get kids interested in education. When that happens, that's when you really get gang members leaving the gang. And it goes beyond reduction of gangs and into building strong youth. That's what needs to happen. That's exactly what needs to happen here in Chattanooga. The last thing, whether I decide to run or not, and I haven't decided to, this is something where I want you to really listen. I really want you to understand this part. You have the power to make that or whatever you think the district attorney's office should be. That's an 8-year position. That's 8 years of working on one direction or another. And so you have the power to get out there and turn out the vote. You have the ability to get out there and decide what you want your city to be. So you have that power to make that decision. 6 months away, and the final election 7 months away. Bottom line, who's heard of the revolving door? Anybody? The revolving door of how criminals go into jail, get right back out on the street. These things are things that can be used to stop that revolving door. That's based on 10 years of experience in the DA's office, with the gang task force, and what I want to share with you today. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions about any of this stuff? Yes, ma'am.
If you set up a gang-free zone, will they not just come over to my neighborhood?
That's something where that's a possibility. They could go anywhere. The gang-free zone is not something that gets gang members to decide to suddenly not be in a gang. They're going to go underground or go somewhere else. But see, that gang-free zone can go other places as well. There's not one silver bullet, but it is one more thing to start returning these neighborhoods to the people that live there. And the feedback we're getting from Los Angeles and other places where it's been effective is the neighbors love it. And there are many more positives than any negatives. Yes, sir.
What's the profile of someone that's not in a gang but possibly could go, they're about to go into a gang? What's the profile of that person?
One of the most fascinating aspects, the question was, what's the profile of someone that's going into a gang? Let's take a show of hands. Who here thinks that that kids make decisions to join gang members 18 and up, 17 and up, 16 and up? Raise your hand when I hit the magic number. 15, 15, 14, 13, 12. That's it. That is it. Gang members in our area typically make the decision to join a gang sometime between the ages of 11 and 12. So to answer your question, what does the average 11 and 12-year-old think about? You cannot understand gang activity if you do not understand adolescence. Testosterone starts to flow, estrogen starts to flow between the ages of 10 and 14, but the prefrontal cortex, and I'm talking about human beings, period. It's not a black thing, white thing, Hispanic thing, or Asian thing. It's a human thing. Our prefrontal cortex is the area of our brain where we make good decisions or bad decisions. That does not reach maturation till the age of 25 or so. So there's a decade almost of all gas pedal, no brake. And those are things that go through the minds of people that are at risk of joining gangs. Now, one of the most fascinating results of the gang study to me, over 5,000 kids were asked all these questions. One of the questions they were asked was, why do you think kids would be interested in joining gangs? Of the 5,000 students that were broken up into grades 6 through 8, grades 9 through 12, Title I schools and non-Title I schools, they were asked this question. The top 3 reasons given by grades 6 through 8 were the same top 3 reasons given by grades 9 through 12, were the same top 3 reasons given by Title I school recipients, the same 3 reasons given by non-Title I school recipients. Opportunity, meaning poverty or money, belonging, their friends are in gangs, and protection. Opportunity, belonging, protection. That's typical adolescent desire. It's typical adolescent dynamic. So what's going on in these kids, those are the biological switches that being part of a gang satisfies. They give you opportunity, show you how to make money. They give you belonging in spades. They definitely give you protection. In the terms in the belief and the perspective of an adolescent. Yes, sir.
What is our capacity in our prison or detention centers, with this escalation? If we stop the revolving door, what is our capacity versus, how do we pay for that? And then two, is there a reform process in place to stop the revolving door outside of the prison?
If we build a prison, we'll fill it.
Yeah.
Okay? That's going to happen. It's all about economics and all about money. How few prison beds can you stand to have? My thought on that has always been, you got to save those for the ones who are the repeat offenders and the violent offenders. I wish everyone who continued to commit crimes got some type of consequence. If it comes down to having a bed for a guy that continually smokes pot, or a bed in jail for a guy who continually robs other people, the pot smoker is going to be on the street. The guy who robs people is going to have that bed. So you just have to be smart about who gets those beds. Now, again, that slide I showed you about suppression is a big part of it. But all those other things have to be in place as well. A RICO case can take out 2 or 3 dozen gang members over a long period of time, 12 to 18 months of investigation, prosecution, sentencing. You get the right job training program, you get a great number of mentors, you can take out 20 or 30 gang members a month. So the services that have to be in place to be effective are things that can take out more gang members than even the suppression. And see, that's the great news. You don't have to have a law degree. You don't have to be a police officer. You don't have to be a judge. You can just help. You can want to teach kids how to read, and you can be part of this. The connection between illiteracy and poverty is staggering. And in 3rd grade, that's when you have the radical divergence, because kids are assumed to know how to read at that level. Well, the kids who don't have those social services, who don't have that support, are going to take a radically divergent path at that point. So there's all kinds of ways, all kinds of spots in this bandwidth where everyone can participate. Yes, sir.
It appears the Littlefield administration and Burke administration differ somewhat in how to attack this problem. Is that true, and can you explain?
Yes. The Public Safety Committee that appointed me to do this, Mayor Littlefield was one of the members on that. But Bill Cox actually put it together. Bill Cox got Mayor Littlefield, Mayor Coppinger, Chief Dodd, Sheriff Hammond, Mitch McClure from the County Commission, Jack Benson from the City Council, and me together to talk about this. What happened was Mayor Littlefield understood, obviously, that this was primarily an urban issue, and he said, okay, I'll write the check to fund it. Bill Cox agreed to loan me out to do it. Mayor Coppinger added in a full-time gang prosecutor in the county budget. So to answer the first part of your question, this was beyond Mayor Littlefield's direction. This was a collaborative effort. However, when the new administration came in, after Andy Burke got elected, before he got inaugurated, I had great open conversations with Travis McDonough, his chief of staff. Just let him know, we can keep doing these types of things. We can work what we have into an existing crime plan. But if you want to bring in new folks and go a different direction, that's fine as well. Just let me know. And I was very open with them. They were very open with me. They wanted to go a different direction. However, the effective direction, and this is something everyone should know about the current administration, they're working hard on doing the things that I know are going to be effective. The ceasefire operation, you may have heard them talk about. That's something from David Kennedy. David Kennedy is a genius. That's something we were working on at the task force. And hopefully Mayor Burke's going to be able to pull off getting something like that going with this administration as well. Getting Lexia, which is literacy software. It's software that's designed for a hard-to-teach population. We got that in the Carver Rec Center. The next step that the new administration did was get it in other rec centers. So I totally support the new administration's direction, which has been to drop the hammer on the gang members who have made their decision to be criminals, but reach out to cut the pipeline of kids going to gangs in the first place. So that's what I see. As long as I see that and everyone else sees that, you should have confidence in this new administration to continue making strides against this issue. Yes, sir.
Do you guys have informants or what have you that you attract to infiltrate to help you out?
Yes.
If you do, you pay them or how do you attract them?
The question is, do we have informants to help, and how does that work? You want to see me afterwards? I'll get you signed up or something like that. But right. No. The single greatest weapon against group criminal activity is intel. It's knowing who the bad guys are, knowing where they are. So yes, there are informants. There are people that are inside these gangs. And the good news is it's not like it's La Cosa Nostra. You know, we aren't going against an organization where people are claiming to be legitimate businessmen. We're going against teenagers and young adults who have Kemp Drive Posse tattooed on their forehead. So they're not hard to spot, okay? And being adolescents, being young men, once the cool factor goes away and they see, well, I've got the choice of doing life in prison or talking about where the guns are coming in from Atlanta, then that's how that works. So. Yes, sir.
There's a big push, I guess, from some folks to legalize drugs, and obviously in, I guess, Colorado, even recreational drugs, marijuana, I don't know what, but and with the thought that that will reduce violence, help eliminate gang problems, and what are your thoughts about that?
The question is, how will legalization of marijuana, just marijuana, right? Talking about marijuana only, okay. How's the legalization of marijuana, how could that be effective? You know, I'm going to give you a couple answers on that because I'm going to answer as a parent, I'm going to answer as a prosecutor. As a parent, once my son was born, I got a whole new respect for the war on drugs. I knew it would probably be very easy for my kids to get it, but if keeping it illegal made it that much harder for them to get it, then I was for it. As a prosecutor, it's illegal. As long as it's illegal, it's a crime. And if it's a crime, if it's a crime, it needs to be prosecuted. However, I have to acknowledge that a lot of the resources that are spent incarcerating low-level drug users, if we're only going to have a finite amount of resources, then some of that could be saved for violent offenders. So the arguments I've heard that legalizing it will put some of these Mexican cartels out of business, I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. The same cartel pipelines that was bringing dope and cocaine, once we got tough on methamphetamine here in Tennessee, they just threw methamphetamine on that same little pipeline. So taking out pot isn't going to cut down the crime on the large scale, in my opinion, on that. It may save us a lot of money on some other things, which, if it makes room for violent offenders, then I am for it.
What if it legalized all drugs? Legalized all illegal drugs, and there was no incarceration of those folks, but tried to control another one?
Well, my answer as a parent and a prosecutor is the same. I'm not behind that at all. So, especially when you come with teenagers. Teenagers are willing to experiment. Teenagers are willing to take chances. Their teenagers are going to, if it's legal, they're going to shoot up, and then by the time they figure out how horrible it is, it may be too late for them. I think you had a question, sir.
How is it that in the same neighborhoods set up that you're not considered racial profiling when you're going in and arresting those that show up in there? How is that not used by the defense attorneys?
Well, defense attorneys have a job, and the job is to zealously represent their client. So the question is, how is racial profiling used in court, and how do defense attorneys use it?
No, how do they not use that as defense against being arrested in safe neighborhoods?
Okay.
Gang-free neighborhoods that you've outlined?
Are you talking about in terms of the gang-free zones?
Yeah. So how can they not use that as, oh, you can racially profile them?
Gotcha. Okay. The question is, how, in terms of the gang-free zones, can that not be racial profiling? It's very easy. The criteria that lay out what a gang member is for those particular gang-free zones are very specific, down to the name. They use tattoos. They use prior affiliations with gang members. They use admissions. Again, the young adults and teenagers that are drawn to this are proud of being a gang. They let people know. We're catching as many people on Facebook as with using DNA. That's just the way it is. Some kid shows up in court, he's all scrubbed up, he's got oversized glasses on his face, and he squinches down in court. You know, that patina of innocence goes away when you drop out the Facebook pictures of him with a 9mm in his waistband, fanning out gun and holding fanning out money and holding a sack of dope. So that's not profiling. That's looking at evidence and deciding who's breaking the law and who's not. And the same thing goes with these gang-free zones. If you're a member of the Gangster Disciples, if you're a member of the Rolling 60s Crips, if you're a member of the Athens Park Bloods, and that organization, which is a criminal organization, has been banned from a particular neighborhood, then that's just the law. Nothing racial about it. And for the record, there are white members of gangs in town. They're largely minorities, but again, this isn't a black thing, white thing, Hispanic thing, Asian thing. Yes, sir.
Can you distribute a list of the gang members to employers that would be interested in it?
That's legal. That's law enforcement sensitive. The question is, can we distribute a list of gang members to potential employers? The answer is, since it's law enforcement sensitive information, the answer would be no. The data that you were shown here was sanitized to where you have numbers, but you don't have specific names. So we know who we know who they are, and we know where they are. But as far as the public knowing, it's just not. That would disrupt a lot of law enforcement operations, I think.
And one last, would you recommend that we all get a concealed carry permit?
Well, would I recommend it? You know, I have one. It's something that, you know, I don't use it much at all. It's one of the things, better to have it, not need it, right? Than need it, not have it. But the carry conceal, I think, is something that if you're going to do that, you need to understand how powerful it is to carry a weapon. One of the most afraid I was this particular year was when I did my particular training for my handgun permit. And I was sitting right next to a lady, or standing right next to a lady on the range when we were shooting, and she was like, "So how does this gun work?" And like that, you know, so we're all ducking down. But that underscores the point where if you're going to get a permit like that, you need to make sure you know how to use your gun. Again, I want to emphasize, this isn't anything where we need to all start carrying weapons. There's not some tidal wave that's washing across, you know, Aquarium Drive as we speak. All the aspects, from the dope dealing to the gang activity that we already have, to the gang activity that is all around us, we have those ingredients around us right now. And I'm encouraging not only law enforcement to get together, but every social service agency, everybody who's interested in going out to the rec centers, everybody who's interested in becoming involved in after-school programs. That's going to be a heck of a lot more effective than getting a permit. It's having citizens coming together to go out there into the streets, into the rec centers, into the schools, and try to prevent the kids from going to gangs in the first place. Anything else? Thanks for your time.